Hello and welcome to another episode of Observation Conversations. My name is Jonathan, and I'm joined as always by my good friend Reid. How you doing?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Glad to be back. And today we've got something kind of exciting planned, I think. We're going to do something of a July 4th special. We're recording this on July 2nd. We've got the holiday coming up, Independence Day. We did something special for it last year, and we thought, let's mark the occasion again, and hopefully we'll be able to get this episode up in time for Tuesday. But yeah, I think we wanted to kick off just by talking a little bit about what this holiday means to us. So, Reid, what does July 4th mean to you? What does Independence Day represent for you?
Well, Webster's Dictionary defines. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I mean, I think for me, July 4th it's kind of changed in the most recent years. I think because when I was younger, it was definitely like time spent with my family. But in the most recent years, it's been time spent with my friends. And, we had our trip last year where we were all together, except I was working. And this year I'll be working. So maybe it's about money. Maybe that's what it means to me now, is just making money. I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of like early memories that I can get into if you want me to.
Sure, please. Some of your favorite early memories?
Yeah, so my hometown, every year we put on almost like a fair or like a festival. So they have all these like carnival games. And they have different activities, like you could fill bottles with colored sands and make pretty patterns, and I think they had like a candle making booth, and they had like bounce castle and other inflatables, and possibly a ride one year. But as a kid, like we used to go every year, and it was just like, this is the epitome of summer fun. Like this is kind of the core memory.
And it is, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time. And then in the evening there'd be the fireworks show, and we always bring a towel and put it down on the pavement. I just look up into the sky. And then as I got older, I was like, maybe the smoke is like not good for the environment every time it like goes off. And now that's like what I think about every time I see fireworks. For whatever reason, I'm just like, oh, that's a lot of smoke. That's probably not good. I don't know. Yes, so it's definitely it's a happy holiday for me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I will say my perspective on July 4th, I mean, it's one of my favorite holidays of the year. I mean, I am a sucker for fireworks. I love any excuse to have these mass fireworks-based holidays, and so July 4th is awesome. New Year's is awesome. I mean, for me, what July 4th, the thing that I've always so appreciated about July 4th is, because obviously America, we've been around for some almost 250 years now.
We've been around for long enough, I think.
Yeah, 247 years, right? And obviously, we're a global superpower, so everybody has an opinion about what our role in the world is, what our role in the world should be. Obviously, no country this big, or just no country period, is blameless. I don't even think Tahiti is blameless. I'm sure they've got some skeletons in their closet. I mean, nobody's perfect.
Well, this is also coming from the man who claimed that, I'm sure if you dig hard enough, you'll find skeletons in Mother Teresa's closet. So,
oh yes, well, it's true. It's true. I mean,
maybe we can judge a little harshly, but no, I think you're right.
Well, yeah, no, it's true. But, I think for me, whatever else you think about the role of the United States in the world today, I've always been in awe of the founding story of this country. It's something that's always impressed me so much. And in a lot of ways, it really kind of has to. I mean, obviously the 13 colonies are a pretty vast space in and of themselves, but there's not many people that lived here. And to take up arms, standing on your principles against a global superpower, and then fighting them and winning in a war of attrition, winning allies, getting other European superpowers to join your side to help you win, that's pretty awesome, And obviously, America has never been blameless. It certainly wasn't blameless then. Obviously, there are still very dark marks on that ledger, but that's a pretty incredible story, and it's even more incredible when you think that it worked. I mean, by any metric, any standard, it's a rebellion that should have been put down very quickly. Britain was the foremost, really, after Spain, the first truly ocean-going global superpower, and they had every reason to believe that they could just crush these idealistic farmers. But it goes to show you that there is real strength in standing on your principles and standing up for your values. And I've always just thought that was so incredibly impressive. And it is a really awesome story. I think possibly my favorite depiction of that particular chapter in history was from the HBO series John Adams, which came out like 15 years ago. The second episode of that it's like an hour and a half long episode just focusing on the Declaration of Independence and the Continental Congresses. And I think it's a brilliant dramatization of just how incredibly tense that was and how intense that situation was. Because, I mean, you have all these people here someone from Georgia may as well be from a different planet than someone from Massachusetts. I mean, these are people that do not have much in common and, in fact, have huge ideological differences, huge governing differences. But they all came together to basically say that we are going to sign this document and announce to the world something that will get us all killed. But because we believe in this cause and because we believe standing together is this important, we are all going to put our necks on the line, and not just ours, but our families, everyone, all of our loved ones, our homes, everything on the line for this cause. And it's an incredible episode of television, essentially a mini film of sorts, just focusing on this one thing.
An incredible episode of history.
It really is.
If you just the fact that many people with differing ideologies were able to come together and agree on one thing, like organizing a group chat of 5 people is impossible.
Absolutely.
Let alone, however many dudes sitting in one room to like sign this document.
Absolutely. And you have to remember that so many of these people were the landed gentry of their states, be it from North Carolina or Virginia or the wealthy merchants of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and New York. So many of these people, if they were only concerned with their immediate interests, their concern would be to maintain the status quo, if at all possible. And that's what many wanted to do at first. That was what the whole First Continental Congress was about, basically saying the First Continental Congress concluded with a very kind of limp, demand to the king to say, hey, you should listen to us and respect us. They sent that to the king, and then they all went home. And then that didn't work. And then we had Lexington and Concord, and they said, oh, shit, we got to meet again. And so that was the Second Continental Congress. But for so many of them, their immediate interest would be to maintain the status quo as efficiently as possible, right? So many of them are rich and aristocratic because of the status quo. But even they agreed to sign up to fight for people in New England who they never knew, they've never met, they honestly couldn't care less about before. But they realized it's more important for us to stand together than it is to just look out for our own potential fortunes. And that is, in many ways, the true definition of risking it all,
I think that also speaks to how I mean, this is a very loaded statement because, obviously, like, slaves and indigenous people were treated 1,000 times worse, but it speaks to how poorly the colonies were treated by mainland Britain, because I'm sure there were some British sympathizers,
Sure.
but
Oh,
you really
many.
don't hear about that
Yeah.
much in history, and it's kind of depicted as a nearly unanimous decision to stand up and
Oh, yeah. Well,
kind of call for
definitely.
independence.
Yeah, definitely when you're learning about it going to school in the US, you definitely don't hear about it much. But I mean, yeah, they basically most of them went to Canada and some of them went back to England.
Yeah.
But there were many that weren't down with the cause, and that was this whole other thing. And so, but yeah, it's just one of the most incredible and for me inspiring stories that you can find in history. And that episode of television I think just captures it so well. But beyond that, as far as the actual holiday of July 4th, well, yeah, like I said, it's one of my favorites. I mean, just any excuse to have mass fireworks going off is always very fun for me.
Any excuse
Um,
to blow shit up.
I mean, honestly, that is also the beauty of America, well, really. So, I would say one of my fonder early memories of July 4th was when I was, I guess, like 9 or 10. Was the first year we went down to the Hoboken, Jersey City waterfront to go watch the fireworks over the Hudson, and just being in absolute awe by that. By that point, that was by far the biggest fireworks display I'd ever seen, and it was just jaw dropping. Like, when you're a little kid and you're right there up on the waterfront and you're seeing this enormous fireworks display go off, one of the biggest in the country, right in front of Manhattan there. It's just it was an awe-inspiring sight I'll never forget. And then, yeah, I mean, just beyond that, it's an opportunity to have cookouts and, family, friends to get together, barbecues. I love to grill, so that's always a lot of fun. Me doing, yeah, barbecues and that sort of thing, and just all the kitschy traditions, parades and whatnot. It's fun. I think some people get caught up if in the idea that if you're celebrating America unreservedly, you're endorsing everything America was and is. That's not
Yeah,
true.
I mean,
It's just
that's kind of what I want to ask you, is like, is it okay to celebrate a nation with such a
and my
problematic history?
and my answer is unequivocally yes, because for me it's not. I don't think the way to look at it is this is a blank check endorsement of everything. It's an opportunity to celebrate the best of what America can be, the ideals that it was founded on, and the ideals that we still are working to live up to 247 years later, because God knows we are still not quite there.
Yeah.
But it's a celebration of what America should be, what America can be, and what America will be if we continue to work towards improving it and making it better. That's how I view the holiday. I think that it is entirely possible, and we have this incredibly myopic way of viewing the world today where everything has to be either good or bad, black or white. It's not like that. The fact of the matter is things can be complicated.
Very gray. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's possible to celebrate something while also acknowledging it's not perfect, and that's how I approach it, and I think that's the best way to view it for most people. I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very healthy mindset, because it's not like inherently bad to be patriotic and to celebrate your country. Um, but I think the trouble comes when you ignore the bad stuff,
Absolutely.
versus recognizing it and saying, yeah, this stuff is bad, but also we can do better.
Absolutely.
Um, I feel like that's something that should be emphasized a little bit more when it comes to patriotism
Mm,
and celebrating America. Is like, celebrate like the fact that it is continuing to grow and change in a positive way,
absolutely.
and that it's correcting its wrongs.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at the progress that's already been made and imagine the progress we have yet to make. But if we keep working at it, as each successive generation does in their own way, we will arrive at that point where we might actually be the proverbial shining city on the hill. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that's an incredible goal for any country to strive towards. I think we all want to be that in some form or another. And so I think it's an opportunity to celebrate the progress that's been made while also continuing and kind of rededicating ourselves to that progress. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
On the other side of that, though, do you think America is the best country in the world?
I mean, honestly, I even object. I almost object to the question because what does that even mean? The best country in the world? I mean, I could tell you it's the country I most want to live in because it's the country I've been living in all my life, and it's vast. Honestly, I mean, I have to imagine it. It would be a very, very different experience and an unrelatable experience, like growing up in Belgium, where your entire country is like 100 square kilometers, and you're surrounded on all sides by other European countries.
It's like I'm sure Belgians have tons of, Belgian pride. Sure. And they're very patriotic. But if you have like this global superpower that's constantly boasting, we're number one, we're the best, the rest of you suck, like you're probably gonna hate that country, right?
Maybe, yeah. I would say that, and that's the problem with the whole. Is it the best country? Because I mean, what metric are we using to decide that? I mean, are we saying economy? Are we saying military? Are we saying average education? Are we saying transportation networks, population, it's like it's and so in that way it's like it's when people ask me, it's like I almost just want to refuse to answer because it's like I don't know what we're even talking about here. But I mean, I will say that this is where I live, this is where I grew up, this is where I intend to keep living. I want to be able to travel widely, but honestly, I don't really dream of living anywhere else. I mean, because look at how many different countries exist just within this one country. I mean, your experience living in Arizona is completely different than the experience living in Maine, and you can't say that if you live in Belgium. The difference between living in The Hague is not radically different than living in Brussels. But, if you are fond of the beach, you can come to Florida. If you want to live in the desert, you can go to New Mexico. If you want to live in the woods, you can go to Maine. If you want a tropical paradise, go to Hawaii. If you want the big city, you've got New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta. The list goes on and on and on. If you want rain, you've got Seattle.
I was going to interrupt you for a second. It was like, if you want to live in the desert, you can go to New Mexico. If you want to live in the desert, you can go to Arizona. If you want to live in the desert, you can go to Utah. If you want to live in the desert,
exactly. Yeah, I mean,
a lot of it is very similar, but
well, yeah, but
I understand the sentiment.
You have multiple states, but it's within one biome. But still, it just goes to show you how vast this place is. If you want the experience of living in Italy in America, you can go to the central coast of California. If you want rain, you can go to Seattle. If you want to gamble, you can go to Vegas.
Just the fact that like all of our states are so much bigger than most countries.
Absolutely.
I feel like there's part of it is. I feel like Americans can take that for granted, especially when it comes to like the distribution of lands.
Absolutely.
But also there are funny comparisons where it's like, a European is like, oh, I was on a school field trip and they told us it was going to be a really long bus ride and it was like 45 minutes and it's like so long. And then Americans are like, laughing in 2 hours for a field trip. Like, yeah, I mean, that's just the experience. You drive a really long way, and that's just part of it.
Absolutely. And I could go on. Yeah, I mean, I could go on. If you like square dancing and rodeo, you can go to Houston. If you like the blues, you can go to Memphis or Detroit. If you like barbecue, you can go to Kansas City. If you, I mean, just and the list goes on and on and on and on. it's a completely vast country, and I do believe that there is something for everyone here. I mean, in a lot of ways, how can there not be? I mean, it's obviously there are so many things worth seeing in this world that are not in the United States, but as far as like the things that you look for in a place to live, there's something for virtually everyone in this country. And I think it's even been proven that we could fit the entire population of the world into the state of Texas with
Oh yeah.
like 20 square feet per person. It's so yeah, I mean it's this country, this country literally could fit the entire population of the world, and I think there is something for everyone here. And so
yeah, but the reason I asked like why is it the number one, or do you think it's the number one country in the world, is precisely because it is kind of a trick question. And I feel like a lot of people kind of subscribe to that mindset that it is the best, and it's like, well, the best in what?
well, exactly.
We have
and
the largest military, best GDP, sure, but look at the class divide in this country and the wealth disparity, and it's like, yeah, we have a really high GDP, but most of that is not experienced by 99% of the population.
No, precisely.
And it's as wonderful as it is to live in America and have these opportunities and have these privileges, um, in a global society, I think it's worth looking at other countries and seeing what they do better. And that's just something that a lot of Americans refuse to do, and I've never really understood why. Because I think we can learn a lot from how other countries do things.
Well, of course.
For example, universal healthcare would be so nice.
Well, of course,
and gun laws also.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, and so, and again, it gets back to that myopic view of the world, because the moment you say America is the best country on earth, America is number one, you have completely shut down any avenue for any conversation about what can be improved. I mean, if you're already the undisputed world leader, you don't have to change a thing because you're already doing great. And so, again, I think it gets back to that myopic black and white. It's either great or it's terrible. And that's not the truth at all. I think we're a great country. I think we've got some great things going on, but obviously we're not perfect. You can look around the world and pull examples from all over the world of areas where we can improve. And I think that it's entirely possible, again, to acknowledge this is a great place. We got great things going on, but we're not perfect. And we should absolutely be looking to other places to find potential solutions to our own problems. America has never been a country that's really solved its problems by looking elsewhere to solutions, but we can certainly incorporate lessons from elsewhere and adopt them in our own way, in a way that works for us. And I think that's the key, and hopefully in so doing, we can provide that example to the world that we strive to be, and we're not always successful, but I think that it is absolutely worthwhile to acknowledge that having an America as a beacon of democracy to the world, and albeit very flawed democracy, but a democracy to the world, to counterbalance
democracy for now,
to counterbalance the Russias and Chinas of the world, I think is an incredibly valuable thing. And so, again, not in the sense of chest beating rah rah, but to say that we really do have something to offer the world. And we've been at this for 247 years, and we have been a leader here. And I think that leadership is a good thing when it's applied as vociferously to the rest of the world as it is to ourselves. I think that we hold the rest of the world to a very high standard. I think the best thing we can do is hold ourselves to that same high standard and hopefully earn that role as the beacon of democracy and republicanism that we hold ourselves up to be. And I say that small r republicanism, of course.
Yeah.
So
200 said 247, right?
Yeah.
That is a long time, but on the scale of like countries, or there's a quote that says like, the average empire only lasts like 300 years. But I was wondering, do you know what the oldest country is?
The oldest country.
Yeah, I mean it's a little hard to define because I don't know if that would be like based on borders, because then if you think about like Japan, has gone through so many different types of leaderships, um,
Yes.
but its borders have never really been broken as far as I know.
Well, yeah, I mean
But
it's
like Greece
probably.
has like a ton of ancient history.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's asking like the oldest civilization. But as far as
Yeah,
the oldest country, you would want the oldest country with the same form of government operating
yeah.
over the longest span of time. And if that's the question,
The British
mm,
British Empire was around for a very long time.
yeah, I mean, in the sense that they did have a constitutional monarchy after the English Civil War of the 17th century. Um, I guess in that sense, yeah, it could be them.
Let's see, maybe I can look this up. Oldest governmental constitution. Okay. Constitution of Canada was 1867. That's not that old. 49, 8. Okay. It says the Constitution of San Marino was ratified October 8th, 1600.
Oh, yeah, that is actually a very good point. Because I mean, I think the Vatican City could be a good contender for that because the Vatican City really hasn't changed the way it's operated. Obviously, it's gotten far smaller since the Middle Ages, but it's basically still the same system.
Yeah, San
So
Marino's current legal system is still based on the 1600 Constitution, so it counts as the world's oldest existing constitution.
good for them.
There you
How
go.
about that?
Interesting.
Yes, indeed. But yes, but something that we should wrap up this section of the conversation with is my fondest July 4th memory. I told you about some fond early July 4th memories. Um, I'll always remember, in addition to that memory about the Hudson River fireworks display, when I was like 13, 14, 15, I spent a few summers in Atlanta with my aunt and uncle and some of my cousins who were also there at the time. And those were my first July 4ths in the South. And those were my first times experiencing the differences between July 4th in the South versus July 4th in the North. Because, of course, in the South, it's a lot easier to buy fireworks, and they have much more relaxed rules and laws about buying them and setting them
Setting them
off.
off. Yeah.
Um, and so that was my first time
As long
experiencing
as you
how.
don't blow up the neighbor's cat, you're good.
Pretty much, yeah. And so just to be there at that time and experience, like literally, you could just walk outside of your house, and in any direction you look at in the sky, there's fireworks going off somewhere. That was my first time experiencing that. Those were wonderful experiences, just taking that in. And to a certain extent, it was similar in California, where you had a lot of different fireworks going off in different directions. But those were great memories.
And my
But
my first time with like lighting fireworks was actually only last year.
Oh wow.
Like I wasn't like I said, I wasn't there July 4th, but like we had kind of a small stockpile.
Mm.
And so like over the next few months we just like occasionally set off a couple. And I think we did some for my dad's birthday, which is in August. Um they're so much fun.
Oh
They're
yeah,
like very
absolutely.
scary, at least for me. Um
I Yeah, and I mean, and I can't tell you how surreal it is. Again, literally, you walk out your front door and your neighbor is setting off fireworks, and you're getting that from that direction. You're getting them from the city park over there. You're getting them from that neighborhood over there. It's everywhere, and so it's crazy. But but yeah, my fondest July 4th memory, I have to say, was just July 4th last year, and we talked a little bit about this in the last episode, but we were able to do our long-awaited, long-planned July 4th get-together with all of our friends last year for July 4th, and that was an incredible
Say
experience.
July 4th, what was
and that was great. You know, we were able to take in that same fireworks display over the Hudson together from the, well, almost together. Sorry about that, Reid. But we were able to take in that as a group, and then we were able to reconvene all of us at the Airbnb later, and we got this absolutely incredible photo of the six of us, I guess it would have been at that time, back at the Airbnb. We'd gotten a cake from a bakery that was the bakery that we always loved going to, or at least me and my family always loved going to growing up. So that was a very nostalgic experience, and so we got a cake from there. And you know, it was just I'll try to put this photo up in the edit because it's an incredible photo of us. And to be able to be there in that moment with you guys and be able to enjoy the holiday with you guys and just take in the vibes of it all. Because again, you know, if you saw the last episode, we went to go see Top Gun Maverick that day. And then we went to the fireworks after that, and then we met up and reconvened all together after that. It was just the most incredible time, and to date, that's what I would say is my fondest July 4th memory, in combination with everything else we did over the course of that trip. Yeah, it was just incredible. So
yeah, it was a great time.
Absolutely. So so with that, anything else that you want to add, or should we move forward?
Well, I did have like some silly questions, but I also don't want to like step on this like very nice emotional conclusion. So I think we're okay to move on to our next segment.
Oh, alrighty. Well, do you want to introduce it? This was kind of your idea, or our joint idea.
I think this was more your idea than my idea. I just came up with the name, and it's not even a creative name.
Well, we thought, you know,
welcome to the President's Game.
Yes, the President's Game. And so we thought, you know what, for this July 4th special of sorts, why don't we, instead of talking about, because last time I think we talked about some movies that kind of were related to or reminiscent of July 4th, we thought this time, why don't we look at a bit of history, and in addition to that, do a little bit of revisionist history. You know, we want to look at each president, all 46 of them, and we want to address where they went wrong and how they can improve. Basically,
I think also we need to rank them, like, or give them scores like out of 10. Not a 46 list rank.
You know what we could do?
Give each a score out of 10.
You know what we could do?
What's that?
We could do a tier list. Okay. All right, here we are. Tier list time. We found one, and we're going to rank them. We're going to rank all of the presidents.
Wait, is there does it say who made this? It says credit to Wikipedia / list of presidents of the United States for the images. I don't know who created this list, but thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, tier maker user who made this. Maybe it's this guy at Freezer Flame. Thank you, at Freezer Flame. Appreciate your list. So, should we kick off with numero uno? The man himself. The
Washington.
Big dog.
I mean, without him, we wouldn't have America.
It's true.
So I feel like naturally he does have to go S tier.
Yeah, no, I mean, he is quite literally referred to as the father of the country. I mean, he is.
But also, he was a slave owner.
He was a slave owner, and that is shitty. And that should probably.
I feel like that probably is a disqualifier, right? Highest he could go is theoretically A tier.
I would say that there are a few slave owner presidents, and I think that all of them should lose points except for Washington. because I think Washington did enough, being the first president, being the leader during the war, and I do believe he also freed his slaves after his death as well.
That's kind of a misconception. I thought he like passed them on to his wife.
Let's see here.
He passed. Or he I don't know. There's some kind of tricky thing where he didn't like actually free them. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe he did.
Let's see here. From the 1760s onwards, his attitude towards the institution of slavery underwent a slow evolution. The first doubts were prompted by his transition from tobacco to grain crops, which left him with a costly surplus of slaves, causing him to question the system's economic efficiency. His growing disillusionment with the institution was spurred by the principles of the American Revolution and revolutionary friends such as Lafayette and Hamilton. Most historians agree the revolution was central to the evolution of Washington's attitudes on slavery. After 1783, Kenneth Morgan writes, Washington began to express inner tensions about the problem of slavery more frequently, though always in private.
So this man like changed his mind on slavery because they stopped being economically feasible.
Well, it sounds like that's how it started.
That's really shitty, though. Like, that shouldn't be the reason you switch sides.
Well, obviously not, but it sounds like he was also influenced by Lafayette and Hamilton, who were obviously not friendly to slavery.
Yeah. I think he's a solid A tier.
Yeah, and then we have here, based on his letters, diary, documents, accounts from colleagues, employees, friends, and visitors, Washington slowly developed a cautious sympathy toward abolitionism that eventually ended with his will freeing his military war valet, Billy Lee, and then subsequently freeing the rest of his personally owned slaves outright upon Martha's death. As president, he remained publicly silent on the topic of slavery, believing it was a nationally divisive issue that could destroy the Union, which is true. So, complicated legacy with slavery, definitely.
Yeah.
But for me, I would say Washington is the only slave-owning president that shouldn't be dinged for it, for that reason.
Yeah, because he did eventually come around to the right side. And also although he wasn't vocal about it, which is bad, he also understood that being vocal would break the country that he just worked so hard to build.
Yeah, so for me, my vote is S tier.
Okay. I can agree to S tier.
Okay. Which takes us to John Adams. Now, John Adams, where is he?
John Adams?
I feel like he gets a little bit of a bad rap now because of Hamilton. I think that for people who actually learn a little bit about what he was able to do, what he stood for, he was our co-ambassador to France during the war. He was ambassador to the Netherlands, got us a much-needed bailout from them during the war. He was our first ambassador to England, was the first vice president, dutifully served Washington, and then as president, he did our best to keep us out of confrontation with France. We had the Revolutionary Wars going on, and he was like, listen, France, it was a lot like Washington. He was saying, we appreciate your help during the war, but we are a brand new country. We're still trying to figure our shit out. We don't want to fight the British again right now just because you've got your own shit going on. We just want to stay out of this.
We literally do not have the resources.
Well, literally, yeah. And I think that, he, in a lot of ways, he was a Federalist. He was our only Federalist president who was identified as a Federalist. After this, it would just be decades of Democrat Republicans. And I think that, it was, I think he's a good guy who was pretty progressively minded. And he was a brilliant statesman, and an indispensable statesman, who helped us enormously during the war in France, in the Netherlands, and England after the war. And for me, I hold Mr. Adams, President Adams, in very high regard. And of course, he was the first president to also have his own son succeed him in the office years later. So I would say John Adams.
Should that be points off for nepotism? Well,
Well,
maybe
he
not
didn't
on
have
him.
anything. Well, yeah, he didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, John Quincy Adams was only prominent because his dad was vice president and then
Yeah.
prominent.
So maybe
But he didn't
he'll
get him.
get. We'll discuss.
Well, yeah, when we get
We'll
much later
discuss
on.
little old Quincy.
Yeah, but yeah, I really like. Do you hear that?
Like a high pitched thing.
No, there's an ad playing right now. Oh,
I don't hear an ad.
oh yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, I think John Adams is strong. The only knock against him is, of course, he's the first president to lose re-election. But in fairness, Thomas Jefferson is a pretty tough contender, tough opponent. So for me, I'm willing to put Adams very high. I'm gonna say, for me, at minimum an A tier for me. I could even make a case for S. I'm not going to, but for me, I think A is the place.
I think
What do
A is fair. I think A is
Okay.
fair.
John Adams is right here. All right, next up, Thomas Jefferson. Now, if you thought Washington was a big-time slave owner, Jefferson was a huge slave owner, and so that's not great.
No.
But
because he was representative of Virginia.
Yeah, he's from Virginia as well.
Or was that? Or wait, it was both him and Madison were from Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, big
but,
on slaves they were.
Yeah, very much so. But he did write the Declaration of Independence, and that's pretty cool. And he was definitely a big thought leader in the early days of the country. He was also a statesman. He was in Europe. He was in France for a while. He was actually our ambassador to France when the Bastille was stormed and the revolution broke out. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, his writings and advocacy for human rights, including freedom of thought, speech, and religion, helped inspire the American Revolution, so on and so forth. Wrote the Declaration of Independence. Was big with the Constitution as well. So, you gotta take. It's like with so many of these guys, you have to take the good with the bad. Yeah. I think that he espoused wonderfully noble ideals. He didn't always live up to them personally, of course, with Sally Hemings, impregnating his slave. That's not great. He had some wonderful words and
wonderful racist words.
Well, I
don't know.
Well, that's the thing. The actions were racist, but the words were wonderful. The words were beautiful. But yeah, obviously the slavery is a huge part of it. As far as the presidency, his own presidency, he was definitely warmer with France, but we didn't get into war, full-on war just yet. That would be, Madison. We'll get to him. But yeah, he was definitely more of the ideologue, more of the poet. And he did win re-election, for what it's worth. I don't know.
What do you think?
I think that it would be poetic justice to put him in the same tier as Adams. I think that would be remarkable.
Okay. The vibe for me was B tier. Just because of the slavery thing, but given how influential he was to the founding of this country, I can agree to A tier.
Okay. And I will also say that him and Adams, they had a bitter feud for years, but they did ultimately reconcile in their final days. And, fun fact, both died on the same day in, I think, 1826. And do you want to know what day that was? That both John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died?
July 4th, wasn't it?
It was July 4th.
Yeah. Exactly
50 years after 1776. On July 4th, they both died. Unbelievable.
I feel like they were kind of like cosmically intertwined.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes sense that they end up on the same tier.
Absolutely, and it's fitting too because Jefferson was always the idealist, Adams was the pragmatist.
Yeah.
Adams was the northerner, Jefferson was the southerner. It's like very yin and yang. So there you go. Moving on to
James
Mr.
Madison.
Jefferson's protege, James Madison. Jimmy Madison.
Jimmy.
Well, he was also a big-time slave owner, but father of the Constitution, helped write the Bill of Rights, so that's all good stuff.
I will say he also recognized the dangers of a two-party system.
And that's true. That is
was
true.
One of the first to warn against it. So
that is true.
I feel like he should be awarded some points for that.
Yeah, and also a wartime leader, the War of 1812. I mean, honestly, it is not difficult to imagine a scenario where we're still this very young country and the British come back in, down through Canada like they did, and just essentially take back what was recently theirs. But thanks to Madison's leadership, that didn't happen. I mean, even after they burned the White House to the ground, the country continued, and he continued, and we won again. Well, we didn't die. We won in the sense that we didn't die.
Yeah.
And we remained an independent country, and that's pretty great. Even as, essentially the Napoleonic Wars were descending into total chaos, and the British were knocking on the door again, we maintained our independence, and I think that's pretty cool. So not quite as iconic as Jefferson, but I would say very nearly as valuable. When you look at the Constitution and you look at the War of 1812,
I'd still say A tier.
Yeah, I'm okay with Madison.
They're all pretty important.
And now
we start getting into the less important guys.
Yeah, we begin to move out of the founding fathers and move into the post-founding era with James Monroe.
Although,
we're about to
James Monroe is technically a founding father.
Oh yeah, I mean he was around, but he wasn't as big of a deal as Jefferson and Madison and Washington and all them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're about to get into a chain of very boring Democrat Republicans. And I think the most
last president of the Virginia dynasty.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can say about James Monroe is he was pretty dull for the most part, and he just kept the ship afloat. And basically, what Jefferson and Madison were already doing, he just kept doing that.
He helped negotiate the Louisiana Purchase, though.
That's good. We like that. But he also did the Missouri Compromise, which admitted Missouri as a slave state, and did ban slavery from territories north of the parallel. But we don't like adding slave states. But yeah, I mean, it was mostly, he just kept on doing what Jefferson and Madison were doing for the most part.
During Monroe's tenure as president, the Federalist Party collapsed as a national political force, and Monroe was reelected virtually unopposed in 1820.
I will say
that's kind of badass that you're just true. Like, I eviscerated this other party.
It is true, and I will say, if his official portrait is to be believed, he was one of the more handsome presidents that we've had as well.
Is he handsome though?
I don't know. I think he's a pretty dashing guy.
I think dashing for the times, but like for today's standards.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like, look at that chin. That chin is.
Well, he's got a butt chin, definitely. But I mean,
it's more.
I feel like
he doesn't have a butt chin. He has a butthole chin. It's like a full on. It's not just a crack. It's like it goes in.
So I don't know. I feel like there is some good stuff there, but he's mostly just kept the ship going in the direction it was going in. For James Monroe,
very
I would say, I would say he's B or C. Maybe
I don't know if he was bad enough to deserve. Well, C is, I guess, middle of the road, right?
Yeah, middle of the pack. We haven't had a D or F yet.
Yeah, he'd probably be C.
Okay, C tier.
I don't know if that's if I could put him in the middle between B and C, I would. But
are you thinking B?
No, we should establish C as the like middle ground.
Yeah, I would say.
Or
Yeah, I would say S and A are the definitely good ones overall. D and F are the definitely bad ones overall. B is neutral leaning good, and C is neutral leaning bad.
okay, so then maybe he'd be B tier.
Okay. Moving along to John Quincy Adams. Now,
So straight up Nepo baby. Just points
now,
off.
of course, his dad was a Federalist. He was technically a Democrat Republican, even though he was a Northerner from Massachusetts. But basically, only Democrat Republicans could win at this point. So, but he's a pretty cool guy, I think. Yeah, I believe he was our first ambassador to Russia, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what it looks like.
He was a Secretary of State. Obviously learned a great deal from his dad. Helped negotiate the War of 1812. We like that. That's good. Being a Northerner from Massachusetts, slavery was not a big issue, so that's definitely a point in favor. Yeah. Oh, also, he led the repeal of the gag rule, which had prevented the House of Representatives from debating petitions to abolish slavery. So that basically opened the door to debating the validity of the abolition of slavery, which is great.
Yeah.
So I am a John Quincy fan. I would say he's probably B, I think.
I think B tier. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely not C tier.
Yeah, he's a good guy, that John Quincy Adams. I like him. Where are you? Here we go. John Quincy Adams. Moving along to one Andrew Jackson. Uh-oh. Old Hickory. Now, Andrew Jackson. The thing is, he's a strong leader. I'll give him that. He was a great leader in the War of 1812. Unfortunately, he was very much murdery towards the natives. And so we don't love that. All of the murder is going to have to count against him.
Yeah.
But he
Plus
was
slaves too.
Yeah, and that as well. But he was a great leader during the War of 1812. Yeah, I feel like, again, the Trail of Tears, again, quite murdery. So I probably would say this is an area where it's tough. It's like
it might
balance
be,
the value.
D tier even.
Yeah, I would say it's tough to overcome the bad stuff with him.
Yeah.
There was good stuff, but the bad stuff is pretty bad. So I won't object to D tier. Moving along to Martin Van Buren.
Now we're getting into the guys that I've like never heard of.
Yeah, well, he was
very forgettable.
Andrew Jackson's Veep. He's from New York. Following the 1824 presidential election, Van Buren sought to reestablish a two-party system with partisan differences based on ideology rather than personalities or sectional differences. Supported Andrew Jackson in 1828 with that goal in mind, and at Jackson's behest, at the 1832 Democratic Convention, they nominated Van Buren for vice president, and he took office after, so he was vice president, and then he ran for president in 1836, and he won.
Wait, did you say that he helped create the two-party system?
Yeah, he was an advocate for it, and he helped get Andrew Jackson elected.
That's got to be points off.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, that's caused some problems. He opposed the annexation of Texas. Obviously, we're going to get into the Mexican-American War in a little bit, but he undertook the costly Second Seminole War, a result of the continuation of Andrew Jackson's Indian removal policy. Refused to admit Texas. He refused to admit Texas to the Union as a slave state as an attempt to avoid heightened sectional tensions. Well, again, as we're about to see, that didn't work. But
there's also the Panic of 1837, followed by a 5-year depression.
Yeah, that as well. So Van Buren, I think we're gonna. What do you think? C or D? You think right around there?
So I was gonna say, like, I don't know if he's as bad to get D tier, but then I just saw this Indian removal where federal policy under Jackson had sought to move Indian tribes to lands west of the Mississippi River through the Indian Removal Act of 1830. So yeah, D tier.
Yeah, no, it's
immediate D tier.
All right. William Henry Harrison, the one who was in office for like a couple months. Yeah, how long? Yeah, he died 31 days after his inauguration.
F tier.
That is literally
if that's not
the
F tier,
only
I don't know
thing.
what is.
Well, like, I mean, exactly. But I mean,
man got elected and then keeled over and died. Like,
it's just so funny. That's the only thing anyone can tell you about William Henry Harrison was how quickly he died. So there you go. We hardly knew ye. William Henry Harrison. To be succeeded by his vice president, John Tyler. Now, Tyler was a stalwart supporter and advocate of states' rights, including slavery, and he adopted nationalistic policies as president only when they did not infringe on the state's powers. So this guy was a big slavery guy. Is there anything else of note? Tyler firmly believes in manifest destiny and saw the annexation of Texas as economically advantageous to the United States, signing a bill to offer Texas statehood just before leaving office and returning to his plantation. When the American Civil War began in 1861, this is after he'd left office, Tyler at first supported the peace conference, and when that failed, he sided with the Confederacy. His presidency is usually given a low ranking. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Well, yeah, I mean,
he was. Then when he was elected, the nation was in the third year of the serious recession following the Panic of 1837. Van Buren's ineffective efforts to deal with the situation cost him public support.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he annexed Texas, which was probably going to happen pretty soon anyway, and obviously Texas is huge, but everything else is not great. And also it got us into a war with Mexico, so that is also maybe not the best thing depending on your perspective.
Yeah. So it's bad, but is it Andrew Jackson bad?
I was thinking D tier with Jackson.
Okay, yeah.
Although I could also go F, honestly. In fact, honestly, I would say below Jackson and Van Buren. I would put him in F. I don't have any love for Mr. Tyler, as it were.
Yeah, because I feel like D is for like really shitty morally, and then F is just like completely ineffective.
Yeah. Where? Oh, here you are. I think. Oh, that's Millard Fillmore. Where's John Tyler? At least I think it is.
Bottom row, second from the right. Yeah.
I think it's this guy.
Yeah, that's John Tyler. That's what Wikipedia says.
Oh, all right. Moving on to one Mr. James K. Polk. Now,
never heard of this person before.
This was our president during the Mexican-American War, and obviously that was a huge expansion of our country. And we as a consequence of winning the war, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's a good thing, I suppose. He was mostly an Andrew Jackson guy, also from Tennessee. reached a settlement with Great Britain over the disputed Oregon country, the territory for the most part
Holy
being
shit.
divided along the 49th parallel. So our country vastly grew as a consequence of this guy.
He presided over a country whose population had doubled every 20 years since the American Revolution. That is some crazy growth.
Yeah.
Wow.
But at the same time, obviously the territorial expansion was pretty good, but big slave owner too. Big slave guy. He made the United States a nation poised to become a world power, but with divisions between free and slave states gravely exacerbated, setting the stage for the Civil War. So, another example of you've got to take the extreme good with the extreme bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to say D. I think that's pretty in line with Andrew Jackson, ultimately.
You think? I was leaning C, honestly.
Yeah, maybe C, just because our country got so much
more effective as a leader and not as murdery.
Yeah,
still kind of murdery, but
well, that's true. I mean, obviously, setting the stage for the Civil War is not great, but it's not like
he wasn't the cause of it.
He wasn't the cause of it. It's not like he was doing anything that anyone else who could be president at this time wouldn't have also done. So, yeah, I could say C. I could live with that. I mean, just think about the Mexican secession. That's California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. We also got Texas, got Oregon, most of Washington. I mean, it's like half of our country was this guy.
So. lot of land.
Yeah.
So probably
I don't know.
Marked the start of the Oregon Trail too.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with C. What do you think?
I don't know. For me, the vibe is C.
Okay.
But
let's put Mr. Polk at C. Where are you?
But that's also just because we don't have an AC tier yet.
Yeah.
I want to establish groundwork for what qualifies as C.
Is this him? Yeah, this must be him. Here we go. There you go. Mr. James K. Polk. Moving along to Zachary Taylor. Now, this guy was a general in the Mexican-American War. His top priority as president was to preserve the Union, but he died only 16 months into his term from a stomach disease, thus having the third shortest presidency in U.S. history.
What was the second shortest?
It was James Garfield. 199 days.
Right, yeah.
And setting the stage up for his successor, Millard Fillmore, who was even more of a problem when it came to setting the stage for the Civil War. But I mean, as far as this guy, he died so soon, after only just a year. I mean, it's a shame. Sorry you died of that stomach disease, but I think F tier.
Yeah, I mean, this guy didn't really do anything because he just died real quick.
Also, this is, I think, the only president whose portrait is his military uniform. Everybody else is wearing a suit, which is interesting.
Maybe he never got an official
I guess
military portrait or presidential portrait, and they just used the military one.
I think so, yeah. But he was a very effective commander in the Mexican-American War. So
yeah, but we're ranking him for his presidential leadership.
And so now we come to Millard Fillmore, and yeah, this guy was this guy wasn't great. He was basically, the only thing I know about him is that he did very little to preserve the Union and was just another one who pretty much allowed things get worse and worse and worse and set the stage for the Civil War. He supported the expeditions to open trade with Japan. That's good. Opening up Japan.
The way this guy died is also giving F tier energy.
He was also definitely...
July 4th, 1850 was a very hot day in Washington, and President Taylor, who attended the 4th of July ceremonies to lay the cornerstone of Washington Monument, refreshed himself, likely with cold milk and cherries. What he consumed likely gave him gastroenteritis, and he died on July 9th. Taylor, nicknamed Old Rough and Ready, had gained a reputation for toughness through his military campaigning in the heat, and his sudden death came as a shock to the nation.
Yeah. And Fillmore, he was also a nativist, definitely a little xenophobic, maybe more than a little bit. He was critical of Lincoln's war policies during the Civil War. I don't know. I don't care about Millard Fillmore. He can go fuck himself. I'm gonna say like F tier. I don't care.
Yeah, it's kind of a nothing president.
And also, just look at this smug grin he's got in his presidential portrait. Like, fuck you. like honestly, I don't like him. Franklin Pierce. Okay. Now, Mr. Pierce, we are getting closer and closer to the Civil War. Now, this guy was even worse than Fillmore because he actively opposed abolitionism. He thought it was a threat to the nation's unity. And he enforced the Fugitive Slave Act, and he was generally not a great dude. He supported the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which nullified the Missouri Compromise. The act's passage led to violent conflict over the expansion of slavery in the American West. Again, we're accelerating towards the Civil War here. And he was a vocal critic of Lincoln. So
F.
Yeah, fuck this guy.
Yeah, I think F tier.
I'm gonna end up saying that about a lot of
these
19th century guys.
I mean, all of these guys are bags of dicks, but like,
I will say definitely more handsome than Fillmore. I'll give him that. He's got kind of
I'm
a
sure
John
most
Tyler
people
thing going
are.
Yeah.
And then going in the opposite direction.
James Buchanan. Now this guy, I don't know. I've always thought that he looks a little bit like Mozart. You know that one picture of Mozart? He looks a little bit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it.
I think you're thinking of a portrait of. I thought that was Beethoven. Maybe. That was Mozart. That was Mozart. You're right.
Was it? Oh no,
right.
Yeah. Well, both of them, they have kind of a similar look. But anyway, this guy was the one who put the final nail in the coffin of not avoiding the Civil War. He was a supporter of states' rights, slavery, minimized the federal government, and just generally a bag of dicks. He intervened to assure the Supreme Court's majority ruling in the pro-slavery decision in the Dred Scott case. He acceded to Southern attempts to engineer Kansas' entry into the Union as a slave state under the Lecompton Constitution, angering the Republicans. He failed to reconcile the fractured Democratic Party amid the grudge against Stephen Douglas, leading to the election of Republican and former Congressman Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, this guy is probably, I would say, the number one president. When we blame the Civil War on any one president, I think it's Buchanan, without a doubt.
Yeah, so this guy definitely sucks.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think he's straight.
Yeah, he said Congress should play no role in determining the status of slavery. He was also an early libertarian, sounds like, with support for popular sovereignty. Yeah, fuck this guy.
Straight to hell. Goodbye. Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously we've arrived at our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, what can we say that hasn't already been said? You know what? Maybe this is a radical statement, but I'm a Lincoln supporter. I think this guy's doing some good stuff. I think he's got a pretty strong legacy. I think
he has a very strong legacy, but also, Wasn't the Emancipation Proclamation like only it wasn't like legally binding. I thought it was like a basically call to release slaves in like Confederate territories where he didn't
Well,
have
yeah.
jurisdiction, so it like didn't really do much.
Well, yeah, it was a wartime measure because there were technically still some slave states in the Union in the Civil War. Kentucky and Maryland technically was one, and Missouri was one. And so he's like, listen, at this point, I can't afford. I mean, I'm already fighting half the country. I can't also afford to be fighting Maryland and Kentucky and Missouri. Let's just keep them on side for now until we do what we really want to do, which is the 13th Amendment, which he
Yeah,
also managed to do.
that is true.
So, and
Yeah.
so,
Also, giving the shortest speech of all time is kind of baller.
definitely,
It's just
definitely.
like, fuck it. I'm gonna like wing it, write it on the train on the way
Yeah.
there.
Pretty
He's a
much.
man
I
of the
mean,
people for sure.
we've discussed like 7 different presidents who were responsible for starting the Civil War, but he came in and he fucking ended it. Period.
Yeah.
Like I think that's all you have to say about that. Fuck all of you. Where slavery's done, and he didn't even ride in like promising to abolish slavery. People just thought that he has some abolitionist leanings, but he didn't come in to abolish slavery. Basically, he came in, and just by virtue of him being Lincoln and being a Republican, half the country said, "There's no way we're standing for this. We're out." And over the next 4 years, he whipped 6 shades of shite out of all of them, and he won the whole fucking thing. And he ended slavery, and that's pretty cool. And so, I mean, listen, you all already knew this. There is Lincoln. Where is he? Where's my boy, Honest Abe? Where is Honest Abe? Oh, here he is. Not even a question. Moving on.
Wait. I don't see the. You're still on the Wikipedia page for me.
Oh,
I
can you
don't see
see that?
the.
I put him in S tier.
I can't see your tier list.
Oh, is the. Are you still not seeing it?
I'm only seeing Wikipedia on your screen.
Oh, here. Let me. Are you able to see that?
Hold on. It's loading. There we go. There it is.
So there you go. I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, we could even rename the S tier the Lincoln tier for all I care. I mean, it's like you already knew this. Arguably the most, you want to talk about baller, arguably the most baller president we've ever had. I mean,
Great
again,
beard. Killer beard.
fantastic. I mean, this is a guy who had the courage of his convictions, and he was just when we talk about the greatest Americans who've ever lived, arguably the greatest, and that's really saying something.
If you look at the presidential portraits, I think Lincoln may have been the first bearded president.
You know what? It's true. The facial hair was not really in vogue before.
Yeah. I will say you can make an argument to take some points off just because he had a shit taste for theater, but
well, no, actually, the play that he was seeing, Our American Cousin, I think it was. Our American Cousin was actually one of the most popular plays in America at the time. And the company was visiting Washington at Ford's Theater for a bit. But that was the equivalent of Lincoln going to see like Hamilton or Wicked or like one of these shows. Like it's just like a really popular show right now. And so, yeah. But anyway, not breaking any news here. Andrew Johnson, fuck this guy. I'm giving him the middle finger up to the camera so you can see it. Fuck this guy. Fucked up Reconstruction. Fucking asshole. I want to put him in F tier. I don't know if you object to that, but that's where I'm saying.
Let's see. Ooh, it sounds like he was drunk at his own inauguration.
He was.
Wow.
He was he was a Southern sympathizer, quite famously. I mean, that was basically the only reason that Lincoln picked him as his vice president was because he knew that after the war, he would need someone with some Southern connections to, help smooth things over. Obviously, he wasn't planning on being assassinated like a month into his second term. But, Yeah, like this is Lincoln never actually intended Andrew Johnson to become the president of fucking anything. Um, and unfortunately for us, that's exactly what happened. But he is one of the worst. So if you don't object, I'm gonna put him in F. There he is.
Yeah, he was like, he considered just letting the states that had seceded join the Union and pretending that they never left.
Exactly.
And like no punishment or whatever. And like that's kind of
He was a prick. Yeah, fuck off. Straight to hell. That's another. Maybe one more finish, we might have to come up with a straight to hell tier, just to revise. But yeah, he could fuck right off. Ulysses S. Grant. Now, I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, obviously he was a great commander during the Civil War. The best commander of the Union in the Civil War. Personally received Robert E. Lee's instrument of surrender. Made Robert E. Lee surrender when everyone thought Lee was the greatest military mind perhaps ever in the history of the country. He was winning every battle with a numerically inferior force until he met this guy. And Ulysses S. Grant beat the hell out of him. And yeah, I mean, as president, he pretty much, I mean, he was much closer to what Lincoln wanted to do than Johnson was.
He established Yellowstone National Park, the first national park.
Yeah, and the civil service as well was a big
sympathetic to women's rights.
Yeah, I will say there was
female suffrage.
Crushed the Ku Klux Klan. Obviously, if his successors had kept on that legacy, they probably would have been extinguished by the 20th century. But he pressed for Reconstruction, the ratification of the 15th Amendment. Really, the only knock against his presidency is there was quite a lot of corruption going on, famously, in the Grant administration. But
Grant publicly supported the Jewish American petition against the Tsar of Russia. This guy was like a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, and again, if we're going off the baller test, Ulysses S. Grant is one of the most baller presidents that we've had, definitely. I mean, this is a guy, again, who did more than almost anyone to win the war, and he was drunk half the time. This is a guy who was a professional drinker, and he still beat the hell out of everybody. That's pretty cool. And he was
in 1875, Grant proposed a constitutional amendment that limited religious indoctrination in public schools. Instruction of religious, atheistic, or pagan tenets would be banned, while funding for the benefit or in aid directly or indirectly to any religious sect or denomination would be prohibited. Schools would be for all children, irrespective of sex, color, birthplace, or religions.
I mean,
I'm leading S tier, honestly.
I mean, there's much more good than bad here, without a doubt. I was thinking he's not quite Washington or Lincoln, but he's definitely A tier for me.
Yeah, I can agree to that.
Where's my boy Ulysses S. Grant?
He's a cool dude.
I mean, and again, if we're just going off the big dick energy test, he's one of the best, without a doubt. Like, very few presidents have had more big dick energy than Ulysses S. Grant. Maybe the most out of all of them. So, yeah, I would say, like, as far as big dick energy, it's him and it's Teddy Roosevelt, are the two that are like the leaders in BDE.
Yeah.
Moving on to Rutherford B. Hayes, another Republican. What can we say about Rutherford B. Hayes? It's one of the most boring presidents we had in the late 19th century. His presidency represented the formal end of Reconstruction. That's not great. He was kind of a mix between the Southern Democrats and the Whiggish Republicans. Ended the federal government's involvement in bringing racial equality to the South. That's not great. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
He fucked that up. So he was an abolitionist early in life, but then he did that. So there you go.
Probably C tier.
Also, you had the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, which he resolved by calling in the U.S. Army to break the strike.
Oh, that's fucked up.
So that's not great.
That's fucked up. I mean, like,
Um,
a lot of the stuff that these presidents have done is fucked up, but
and also the assimilationist program towards the Indians with the Dawes Act of 1887. So I don't know. I would say maybe D. D feels right.
yeah, probably D.
Rutherford B. Hayes. Yeah, but now you start to see much more of the facial hair coming in. I think Lincoln really normalized it. All right, moving along. How's our pace going? We're doing pretty well, actually. James A. Garfield. Another mostly boring one.
Also died real fast.
Yeah. Advocated for agricultural technology, an educated electorate, and civil rights for African Americans. Did civil service reforms. Succeeded by Chester A. Arthur. This is the other short one. March to September. So I don't know. I feel like, again, being so short, that's an F.
Yeah.
Sorry, James A. Garfield.
Like the beard, though.
Like the beard, unfortunately, you died simply too quickly to overcome the F tier. Where is this guy? Oh, here he is. Chester A. Arthur. Okay. Presided over the rebirth of the U.S. Navy. He, let's see here. He did sign the Chinese Exclusion Act. So that's not great. That's definitely a bit racist, isn't it? Enforced the Immigration Act of 1882 to impose more restrictions on immigrants. Did more civil service reform. Mark Twain wrote of him, "It would be hard indeed to better President Arthur's administration." So Mark Twain was a fan. He's described as one of the least memorable presidents, and he's usually ranked as average. Journalist Alexander McClure wrote, "No man ever entered the presidency so profoundly and widely distrusted as Chester Alan Arthur, and no one ever retired more generally respected, alike by political friend and foe." The New York World summed up his presidency: "No duty was neglected in his administration, and no adventurous project alarmed the nation." So basically, his great achievement was not rocking the boat. Well, in that case, I think that he did what everyone wanted, which was nothing. The only big knocks against him were all the anti-immigration stuff. So, I don't know, C?
Yeah, I'm feeling C.
All right, moving on. Grover Cleveland. This is an interesting guy. First off, we should mention he was a New Jersey guy, and we're both New Jersey guys, and so that's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, we like that. Of course, his big claim to fame was he won, and then he lost, and then he won again, and so that's pretty cool. I feel like that takes some gumption.
Mm-hmm.
He was opposed to high tariffs, free silver, inflation, imperialism, and subsidies to businesses, farmers, and veterans. His crusade for political reform and fiscal conservatism made him an icon for American conservatives of the time. Cleveland also won praise for honesty, self-reliance, integrity, and commitment to the principles of classical liberalism. He fought against political corruption, patronage, and bossism, and convinced many like-minded Republicans called mugwumps to cross party lines and support him in the 1884 election. Also, he got married in office, which I think is the first time that's happened. A president married in office to Frances Folsom, who this was actually quite an interesting character in her own right. She was quite vivacious, and she actually brought a lot of life into her role as hostess of the White House. And so that's just an interesting little detail about Frances Cleveland. But yeah. He didn't want to annex Hawaii. He once again intervened in the Pullman strike to break the strike, supported the gold standard, did preside over depressions, though. Depressions and strikes in the second term. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like we got to give him some points for being a New Jerseyite. The first such to be the president, but not the last, as we'll say. And I think it is baller to win, lose, and then come back and win again. Generally, he did a lot of reforms.
Cleveland lobbied the Congress to pass the Scott Act, which prevented the return of Chinese immigrants who left the United States. That's not great.
But still not as bad as Chester A. Arthur doing the Chinese Exclusion Act in the first place.
No, not as bad.
I'm prepared to give.
He was also reluctant to use federal power to enforce the 15th Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah, I'm prepared to put him in B. What do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, there's some bad, but I feel like the good probably outweighs. I can agree to B.
All right. Moving along. We'll actually come back to Mr. Cleveland in a moment, but first we have to talk briefly about the man who beat him and then lost to him. No, we're not there yet. Benjamin Harrison. There we go. Benjamin Harrison. So Cleveland was a Democrat, Harrison was a Republican. Let's see here. Did the McKinley Tariff, Sherman Antitrust Act, modernized the Navy. Generally considered an average to below average president. Yeah, really didn't do much. He did facilitate the creation of national forest reserves, setting the stage for our national park system.
Oh, he's grandson of William Henry Harrison.
Oh, look at that! I didn't even put that together. Benjamin Harrison. So yeah, I mean, I don't feel strongly about him. He mostly just kept, again, like so many of these 19th century guys, they mostly just kept the ship moving in the same direction it was.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. C.
Hold on. Yeah, probably C.
All right, C it is. And of course, that brings us back to Grover Cleveland, who beat him again, and will beat him this time, and was president again, but we've already talked about him. So let's move on to William McKinley, the next president to get assassinated after Lincoln. But he had a pretty good run. He did get assassinated, right?
Wait, there's one after Lincoln.
Yeah, fatally shot September 6, 1901 by an anarchist. But
Garfield was after Lincoln.
He didn't get assassinated, though. Did he?
The assassination of James A. Garfield, the 20th president of the United States, began at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C., less than 4 months after he took office.
Okay, well, there you go. So McKinley, the first president to be assassinated since Garfield. Now, he did do some stuff before that. Most notably, he was the guy who was in charge during the Spanish-American War. Yeah. So he was the Spanish-American War president, which got us Puerto Rico and Guam and the Philippines. He also was the guy who annexed Hawaii. So there's that. So basically, your opinion of McKinley will come down to what your opinion of the Spanish-American War is. And I mean, look, Cuba was going to rebel at some point, right? I mean, Spain was horrible towards Cuba at the end. And so it's basically like Cuba's going to rebel. And right now we're in this age of empires where European countries have these huge global empires everywhere. There's definitely an element of imperialism to our own intervention into it, but unlike Europe going to Australia and Africa, this was literally like on our doorstep. And then getting like Guam and the Philippines, that was just like a coincidental outcome, basically, of it. But you know, obviously Cuba didn't become a state. You know, they were promised independence and they were kind of in and out of our sphere until they broke away completely in the 50s. But I mean, I don't know. I think that helping Cuba fight against Spain is more good than not good. And it's not like we annexed them afterwards. So
Yeah. Another interesting piece. McKinley and Hay engaged in negotiations with Britain of the possible construction of the Panama Canal,
which was also huge, and we'll get into that with the next guy.
Yeah, but, and then in the wake of McKinley's election in 1896, Black people were hopeful of progress towards equality. McKinley had spoken out against lynching while governor. Most Black people who could still vote supported him in 1896.
And also, we have to thank McKinley because by virtue of his assassination, we do get to the next president. But we'll get to him in a minute. For now, McKinley, I think, is B.
Yeah, definitely B tier.